Its AI tool, Grok, is being used to generate sexualised images of women and children. Ofcom says it gave the company a deadline to explain how it's protecting UK users and has now fast-tracked a probe into whether it's breaking the Online Safety Act. The Technology Secretary said sexualised images created by the AI chatbot are weapons of abuse.
Sharing intimate images without someone's consent or threatening to share them, including images of people in their underwear, is a criminal offence for individuals and for platforms. The Data Act, passed last year, made it a criminal offence to create or request the creation of non-consensual intimate images. And today, I can announce to the House that this offence will be brought into force this week.
Elsewhere today, former Conservative Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi has defected to Reform UK, declaring Britain is drinking at the Last Chance saloon. Standing alongside Nigel Farage in London, Mr Zahawi said the country really does need Farage as Prime Minister to pull it back from what he called a dark and dangerous chapter. Mr Farage hailed the move as proof Reform UK is not a one-man band. While the Conservative Party has hit back, calling Mr Zahawi a has-been, while Labour Party Chair Anna Turley described him as a discredited politician. To the Middle East, and Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has spoken to authorities in Iran, saying that the Iranian government must immediately end this violence. It comes as the country is entering a third week of unrest, with a rising death toll and the regime tightening its grip on nationwide protests. Human rights groups say at least 544 people have been killed and more than 10,000 arrested as protests harden into open defiance of the supreme leader. The Foreign Secretary went on to say that the killing and brutal repression of peaceful protesters in Iran is horrific. President Trump says Iran wants to negotiate, but warns he hasn't ruled out military action, with the White House now weighing what it calls very strong options. Inside Iran, an internet blackout continues. And tens of thousands of people across Sussex and Kent are starting the week without running water after Kent County Council declared a major incident. South East Water blames Storm Goretti, freezing weather and a power failure at a pumping station, with 14 postcodes still dry around East Grinstead, Frant and Tunbridge Wells. Schools, libraries and even parts of the local hospital have been forced to shut, with bottled water being handed out to keep essential services running. Local MP Mike Martin says the situation is bizarre, warning the water company must now get a grip. Those are your latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you for that. And hello, good evening to each and every single one of you on this cold Monday. How are you all doing? I hope you're well. I hope you've had a good day, and I hope you're also managing to keep warm and dry wherever you are as well. My name's Michelle Dewberry. Of course, this is Dewbs & Co with you till 7. Alongside me, I've got the Head of Policy for Reform UK, Zia Youssef, and alongside him, I've got the Labour MP, Barry Gardner. Good evening, gents. You're both very welcome tonight. As of course, each and every single one of you join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, of course. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet, or you can X me. There are so many things that we need to discuss before 7 o'clock hits us, and I really do invite you to do so every single night, because it is not just about us, it is about you at home as well. So let's kick off by something that I know has got you all talking, just been referenced there in the headlines. Take a watch of this.
Even if you don't yet realise that Britain needs reform, you know in your heart of hearts that our wonderful country is sick. How many of you at home have thought to yourselves that nothing works today? I know I have, and I have it a damn sight easier than most people. That is why I'm standing here today as the newest member of Reform UK.
I did not have that on my 2026 bingo card, and I too do indeed meander around society, reflecting to myself that a lot of things are not working the way that they once did, or perhaps should. But I personally look inward and I blame people like Nadeem Zahawi for the fact that they are not where they are supposed to be. I'll come to Reform UK in just a second, but let me start with you on this one, Barry Gardner. What did you think when you heard this news today?
Well, actually, I thought that Reform need to be very careful because they seem to be becoming the refugee party for failed Conservative politicians. And if they care to remember what happened at the last general election, the Conservative Party and those politicians were rejected very roundly by the British public, and yet they now seem to be the trophy of Reform, who are welcoming them with open arms. So I think Reform need to be very careful about the people they let in.
So when you see the likes of Nadeem Zahawi defecting, because let's face it, Reform UK are battering you in the polls right now. So when you see people like Nadeem defecting, does this make you more or less concerned about the threat that Reform UK posed to you, the Labour Party?
I'm not concerned that Nadeem Zahawi has joined Reform. No, not at all. Look, as I say, he was one of the key architects of the Conservative period in government. He was a Chancellor. He was the chairman of their party. I accept that he had to be dismissed as chairman of the party because of his failure to observe the ministerial code, and there were the issues around his tax. But I know Nadeem. He's a charming fellow, and I accept what he said, that his failure to pay something like $3 million to the HMRC was careless and not deliberate, and I accept that. So I'm not going to try and throw mud at him. He's somebody who did very well in business, but he did not do well in government. And that's why I say for Reform to sort of brandish him as a trophy when the British public rejected him, when his own party rejected him and forced him to resign, I think is rather foolish of Reform.
Zia Youssef?
Well, look, I understand why people have concerns, people who support Reform, because if you look at things he has said in the past, I actually agree with Barry on this. We need to be careful because he said things about BLM, he said things about vaccines, he said things about amnesties for illegal migrants, etc. But I will say this too. He has changed his views on those things. And one thing I will say, I was chairman of Reform UK for a decent amount of time as we built this party. I'm head of policy now. I don't know if everyone really understands the extent to which every non-democratic element of the state will throw everything they can at Nigel Farage as Prime Minister and Reform in government to try to stop us. And having somebody like Nadeem who can help us see around some corners with the experience that he has, to be fair, in getting some things done, that I think will be invaluable. So what I would ask is that people ask themselves, do they trust Nigel? Do they trust me? Do they trust Richard and Lee and Sarah and everyone at the top of Reform to deliver on the things that we are promising people? We're saying that forget about amnesties for illegal migrants. We're going to deport every single illegal migrant in this country. We're going to stop the boats. We're going to make sure that net migration collapses so much that it's probably going to have to be negative for a sustained period of time, given that we're going to deport hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people. Those are the questions people need to ask themselves. And I will say this too, again, as someone who built an organisation, and we're really focused on making sure we can deliver for people in the real world. And having somebody, again, who can help us see around some corners, who has some experience, meaningful experience of government, that, as Nigel says, that people like myself do not have, I think will be really helpful to us.
But when he's helped you see around these corners, where is he going to lead you? Because I can remember back to the COVID days. Many of my viewers as well will also remember the COVID days. I will never forget them, quite frankly. And for me, I was not on board this vaccine bus. I was not someone who believed that you could have had your rights curtailed in terms of where you socialise, what you can do, what you can't do, by the fact that you make a choice for yourself about what goes into your own body. I was pretty appalled by what the Tories actually did to try and ostracise, alienate people who decided that they don't want to inject themselves or be injected with a new kind of drug that had no long-term safety effects. And actually, Nadeem Zahawi, he championed children and encouraged children getting those vaccines. He championed, despite saying previously he wouldn't, he championed people getting their movements restricted based on their vaccine status. So many people watching this, and I know this because you've been getting in touch with me all day long about it.
Yeah.
You're asking, I mean, you say that people change and all the rest of it. I mean, you've got to have a pretty big personality transplant to change that much. Does that not concern you? Because you share many of the concerns that the viewers have about you don't want things like digital ID, you don't want authoritarian governments and all the rest of it. Do you share those concerns?
Not only do I share them, I'd probably compound those concerns. I think the way the Tories handled COVID was an absolute disgrace. So, like, I'm on the record. I tweeted out that I frankly think people like Matt Hancock should face criminal charges. That's my personal opinion. I think there's a case to be made that Boris Johnson should face criminal charges for what they did during COVID. I think not only, look, you can make arguments about the lack of scientific evidence and rigour that the COVID vaccines went through before they were pumped through entire populations around the world. But you can also, Michelle, make the point that people were coerced into taking these vaccines. You know, you couldn't travel. That they basically said that if you did not... Yeah, but let me be crystal clear. Nadeem Zahawi's not joining Reform UK to be our health secretary. He will not be making those sorts of decisions. And by the way, he has changed his views on these things. But again, I want to emphasise this point. If you're building a political party, and we're in the business, Michelle, of making sure that we can turn this great country around, and I maintain the point that somebody like Nadeem, who can help us see around the corners, particularly with regards to the blob, and making sure that we can get our agenda through, that's going to be critical. And our agenda, Michelle, I assure you, people can ask themselves what they think, people like I believe, people what Nigel believe, people like Richard believe, around the issues that you've talked about. As I said, I wasn't even in politics at that time, Michelle, right? I remember, as a private citizen, looking at the way the Tories handled COVID. I thought it was one of the most catastrophic periods of government this country has ever had. I think they trampled over civil liberties. I think the whole vaccine thing was an absolute disgrace. And the second and third lockdowns in particular were totally uncalled for, unnecessary, and imposed upon the British people in a dark period in this country's history.
At what point, if any, do you worry? Because this is a point that's been coming through thick and fast to me today. It will probably have been coming through to you too. At what point, if any, do you get concerned that reform will essentially become Tories 2.0?
Yeah, look, I've been getting messages like that too all day. And again, I want to emphasise, I hear those concerns. I'm certainly not dismissing them. But what I'm telling people today is to understand that what reform stands for are the very things that the people messaging us right now care deeply about. You know, as I said, I'm already on the record that, like I said, people like Matt Hancock and, in my view, Boris Johnson should face criminal consequences for what they did during COVID. But I want to say this too. Again, look, we're very practical people, and we were in this to turn the country around, not to build political careers for their own sake or win elections for their own sake. And having some people, as an insurgent political party, Michelle, that basically was a non-entity just, 19 months ago, having some people who have some experience of government is helpful. It really is. And they're not, you know, Nadeem Zahawi, whatever you think of his views on vaccines, and as I said, he's changed his views a lot recently, but I understand why people are concerned, right? I do believe you should judge people on their record. I will say this, he will not be our health secretary, I'll tell you this now. He will not be making those sorts of policies. And people have to ask themselves, A, do they trust Nigel? And Nigel's been around for decades, right? People know what he believes. And two, do you want us to actually be able to deliver on the things that we are promising the British people? And I will say this, Nadeem Zahawi joining us is additive to our ability to deliver.
A couple of years ago, Nigel Farage was on this channel, actually, and he was talking about people just basically trying to shimmy up the greasy pole to serve themselves. And I'm sure he was talking in reference to Nadeem Zahawi himself there. The Tories have said today that Nadeem Zahawi has been badgering them to get a peerage, that they've said no because of some of the antics, the tax antics, etc., that Nadeem got up to, and that they feel that that is why he's gone to you. Has he gone to you, Reform UK, in order to try and get himself in the House of Lords once and for all?
Well, obviously, the Tories would say that, wouldn't they? That's obviously what they would say. They would say that. But look, all I can say is this, that having somebody with Nazim's experience at the highest levels of government is... Look, again, as Nigel has said frequently, and it's actually quite unusual for a political leader who is the bookmaker's favourite to be the next Prime Minister, to actually say having some people with experience incrementally to what we have now in our team would be helpful. And I want to emphasise this too. Nadeem Zahawi is not joining Reform to be our shadow health minister, right? He is joining to give us some valuable insight into what is coming our way if and when we win the next general election, which is obviously what we're working towards, and we're in pole position to deliver. And again, people have to ask themselves, do they trust Nigel? Do they trust the rest of us in the leadership team at Reform? If you do, and you really believe that you want us to deliver for the British people, then something like this is helpful. But I want to emphasise one more time, I share the concerns that a lot of the people have reached out to you on your show and have reached out to me personally today. And frankly, not only do I share the concerns, Michelle, it's why I'm in politics. I was a private citizen running my company when all this mad stuff around COVID was going on and the British people were betrayed 1 million times over. So people, I hope, will understand why I'm in politics, but also why Nigel came out of retirement, having given decades to this country.
Well, Barry Gardner's doing a sharp intake of breath. What's the matter?
No, look, it's just that Zia has now justified it in the same way 4 times, saying that this is going to help Reform see round corners. All I would say, Michelle, is that when a politician changes his views that radically, that he goes to a party that previously he has deplored and is on the record as having, said bad things about, it strikes me that it's probably for his own benefit more than for the public's.
I know, but
I'll leave it at that.
The flip side of that, because I've got to tell you, I think this Nadeem Zahawi thing is weird. I found it a very bizarre choice for Reform UK, I've got to tell you. But the flip side of that, Barry, is I've seen today people busying themselves, going backwards a decade plus, saying, oh, look at what he said about Nigel, look at what he said about Brexit, look at what he said about all these things. And I actually find that quite pathetic, really. Because when you start digging back a decade plus into anybody's history or anything that people change their view, and they do.
Look, of course people change their views on individual things, but this is a rather startling global change of view. As I say, it's up to Reform who they admit, but if I were trying to help Zia, I would say, be careful you don't become, as you put it, Tory light or Tory 2.0.
Last question on this. One of my viewers, Guy, he's got in touch and said, please, can you ask Zia, you served directly, have there been any Tory MPs that you have declined to take on?
People don't see the massive number of, former Tory MPs. I'm not going to say current Tory MPs necessarily, but certainly former Tory MPs, lots of Tory councillors, in fact, the majority, that the party says no to. So, absolutely.
I thought it was really weird, by the way. I sat and watched the whole thing today, the whole Q&A and all the rest of it. And Nadeem Zahawi, he kept peddling his book. Someone was asking him questions. What do you think to this? He's sitting there saying, well, I answered this in detail in your book. Well, that's absolutely riveting, but who's going to sit there and read your entire book? Just answer the question that you have been asked. Of course, Nadeem Zahawi, you're always welcome on Dewbs & Co. All views welcome, and the rest of it. Get your thoughts coming in on that and more coming up after the break. Should there be a snap general election? Would you support that? And if so, tell me how soon.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, till 7, Zia Youssef and Barry Gardner alongside me. Anne says, come off it, Barry Gardner. All politicians are in it for themselves. You're not fooling anyone, she says. Some are just a bit better at hiding it than others.
I'm sorry that somebody's said that.
Anne
because
forward.
I mean, and I would say in both major parties and indeed in all the parties, of course you'll find some people who are like that. But actually, there's a lot of decent people in politics who could be earning a lot more outside and who are not because they actually want to do public service. And I think it's a shame when people, you know, are cynical about everyone. Not everybody's in the same situation.
Scott says, Michelle, you are missing the point entirely. It is the Tories that are Tory light. That is the whole point of reform's existence. We needed a party that was actually conservative and not just in name. Neil in Yorkshire, good man. You said, I was a Tory supporter for 40 years. I did not leave the Tory party. They left me. He says, Nadeem is welcomed by the Reform membership. Thank you very much. And we're not bothered about 10-year-old remarks. Well, there you go. Are you bothered about the date of the next general election? Because get this, there's been a petition that's been signed by over 1 million people demanding essentially a snap general election, so one pretty much now. What do you think to that? I can tell you they've been debating it. I hate to break the answer to you, but you're not going to be getting one anytime soon. That's the spoiler alert, ladies and gents. You can join the conversation though. I've got a poll running asking you, do you want a snap general election? Yes or no? You know how these polls work by now. Get your telephones out, take a picture of that QR code that's on your screen, a simple vote, a yes or a no, and I'll give you that answer before the end of the programme. But Zia Youssef, would you welcome a snap election?
Absolutely, because if there was a snap election, Reform would be the majority, Nigel Farage would be our Prime Minister and our country would be on the road to recovery. And, you know, what has happened with regards to Keir Starmer's poll ratings is unprecedented in history. It is unprecedented in history. In fact, I tweeted out recently, the current government's approval ratings are just 2 points in the UK, The current government's approval ratings amongst the UK electorate are just 2 points ahead of where the Black Plague polls with Americans. That's how unpopular Keir Starmer is. He's managed to out-Sunak Rishi Sunak in double quick time with no sign of recovery. And that's why it's highly unlikely he'll be our Prime Minister by the end of this year.
Do you think, well, obviously you're going to say no. I was just about to say, do you think we should have a snap general election? So I'm assuming you're going to say no, yeah?
You assume correctly.
So let me ask you this then. How does it make you feel that so many people in this country are pushing this so early in your government's tenure?
Look, can I just say, for 14 years of a Conservative government, you could have had 10 million people, who had voted Labour saying, please give us a general election tomorrow, because they wanted the Conservative government out. In any government, it's always the case that you've got approximately at least a third of the people.
Oh, Barry, come on.
Barry, when was the last time that the current government of the day was polling at 11% approval?
Look,
Genuine question. When was the last time that the government of the day was polling at 11%?
Last time, as you've just said, Zia.
So why do you think that is? Genuine, why do you think that is?
I think it is because the disaffection at the end of the Conservative government was so great, and the hope was so great that there would be...
Sorry, so it's the Tories... I dislike the Tories as much as anyone.
Zia,
you're blaming the Tories for the fact that the current government is polling at 11%.
You talked for a very long time justifying your party and Nadeem Zahawi, so please allow me just to answer your question.
Go on then.
There was a great expectation that things would change. In fact, that was the title of the Labour manifesto, change. And they haven't seen that change quickly enough. And what they've seen is a series of missteps and U-turns, OK? So I can analyse it very clearly as to why people are fed up. But I do believe that ultimately, in 3 years' time, when we do go to a general election, things will be markedly different.
But how so? Because you talk about U-turns. Now you've got one of your own MPs, a Labour MP, frankly, to his credit, is saying that he's threatening to trigger a by-election, which, by the way, the latest nowcast from electoral calculus basically shows that Reform would win that seat with 50% of the vote. He's threatening a by-election in protest about David Lammy and Keir Starmer's attempts to withdraw the right to jury trials to a lot of British people, because he himself, if you actually read the story, it's quite moving, because he was falsely accused of a crime. He was accused of...
I know Carl very well, and he's a very decent and honourable man. He was the Shadow Solicitor General, so he speaks with
So what does it tell you that a deeply honourable man is threatening to trigger a by-election? And frankly, he says, if you read the Times interview with him, he basically says he's got a lot of support. So it sounds like another U-turn is coming.
It tells me that there are, contrary to what the viewer emailed in, there are really decent, principled people in politics and in the Labour Party. And
who are rebelling against your government and Keir Starmer.
Carl is one of them. And I have already expressed my concerns to the whips about this proposal. And we'll see, you may be right. There may
so you'd welcome a U-turn then?
Absolutely on this.
But that's my point. So do you not understand that if you're saying that one of the reasons why Keir Starmer and this government's approval ratings have tanked and collapsed is because they keep doing, frankly, awful things that were not in their manifesto with no electoral mandate that the British people hate, and then U-turning on them, and yet you would support them U-turning on another thing that was not in the electoral manifesto and that British people hate.
But what I would also point out is the counterweight to that, and that is the good things that this government has been doing and the change in the economic prospects of this country and the way in which interest rates for people who are paying their mortgages have come down by 5 times and possibly going to come down further this year.
That's independent Bank of England policy.
Well, actually,
that's not yours.
I'm sorry.
Barry, interest rates are coming down because our economy is grinding to a halt.
I'm sorry. Look, these are things which change the economic situation for people materially. And the things that the government is doing in terms of addressing child poverty, the way in which the government is dealing with violence against women and girls, something that Michelle obviously cares hugely about. We've talked about on this programme. So there are really important things that the government is doing. And actually, you know, if you look in London, where I'm a member of Parliament, we've just found that actually the homicide rate in London is now down to 1.1%, the lowest it's been, thanks to the implementation of the measures put in place by Sadiq Khan, which I know is
but
not...
knife crime is up 40% on a year ago. Knife crime is up 40% on a year ago, Barry.
I'm sorry, if you just check the figures, it's 1.1%. It's lower than Washington. Okay. It's lower than all the other comparable cities, and it's the lowest.
Barry, but knife crime is up 40% on a decade ago. So telling people who have been stabbed that the good news is they're less likely to die because we have formidable now emergency services who tragically have become so used to responding to such things that they're pretty good at saving people is of no solace to people who are being stabbed, Barry. People do not feel safe in London.
Like Zia, but you know, saying that the reason homicides are down is simply because we've got better ambulance services.
But that is the reason. People are being knife crime. How do you explain knife crime being up 40% over the last decade? Please. People feel deeply unsafe. That's not just my opinion. That's backed up in poll after poll after poll. And this is why, actually, this is, I would argue, another reason that has compounded Keir Starmer's precipitous decline in the polls. There is this tone deafness about it, which is finding some statistic that supports some argument that runs counter to the intuition of people who actually live in this country, who feel like their country is being taken from them. And by the way, I would argue, if you actually look at the poll ratings, look what happened in his first few weeks, when the whole point of Keir Starmer basically was that we're not as bad as that Tory lot, we're not as basically corrupt. And then what happened? It turned out he was actually a donor. A lord was paying for his designer clothes, paid for his wife's designer clothes, paid for his spectacles. He bought spectacles, designer spectacles, for thousands of pounds. I don't know anyone who does such a thing. So, frankly, in every possible respect, Keir Starmer has not only disappointed voters and the electorate, but also he kind of punked the entire Labour membership in winning the leadership in the first place. He basically claimed to be a Corbynista leftist, and then when he won, he basically said, well, I'm not that at all, and then Morgan McSweeney, in all of his genius, unwound all of that stuff. So I find it really interesting that you think that Londoners should feel really happy that, according to one data set, the murder rate is down, when in actual fact, in many other ways, whether it's shoplifting, whether it's knife crime, crime is through the roof. And that is what makes people feel deeply unsafe. And instead of addressing that head on, you try to gaslight people. And I think that's why, in many ways, not only Keir Starmer, but I think Sadiq Khan too, is deeply vulnerable.
Zia, can I just say that this is supposed to be a dialogue between the two of us? If you just keep talking endlessly, then it sort of reduces the point of the show.
Well, go on then. What's your final point you want to make back?
The point I want to make back is that the government is doing a whole series of really good, really commendable things. And over the next 3 years, they're going to bear out into the economy, they're going to bear out into people's lives, and they're going to feel at the end of the day that actually they're better off under the Labour government than they were under the Tories, and they're better off under a Labour government than they would be under Reform.
I do feel very strongly, by the way, about the safety of women and girls, as you know. And one of the things that infuriates me is that I have so many people in our government who seem to think that women can actually have penises. And we're still sitting there about a year on from the Supreme Court ruling about biological sex is what it matters when it comes to the Equality Act, when it comes to single-sex spaces. And still, we haven't had the guidance from the government yet as to how people should be going about implementing that. I think that is unforgivable. And I think it contradicts directly a government who say, actually, we really care about the safety of women and girls, because I would argue your actions in those areas dispute and contradict that.
Well, I absolutely agree that the court ruling was fundamental and it got it right. And that is now being applied, of course, within the prison service.
Where's the guidance then?
It is now being applied within the prison service, so that if you're born biologically of one sex, that is the prison that you'll be allocated to.
Because there was supposed to be guidance issued, because so many organisations to this day are hiding behind, oh, we don't know what I mean, how pathetic you've got to be not to know how to implement this stuff is beyond me. But notwithstanding that, they are saying that they're waiting for this guidance. The guidance still hasn't yet been issued by this government.
Well, I can check that out, Michelle, but the government acknowledges that the court ruling is absolutely correct, and it's implemented it in the prison service and other services.
But then they should have issued this guidance that has been long awaited, that people are hiding behind the absence of, not to actually enforce the Equality Act 2010 single-sex spaces. I've got to tell you, by the way, your poll result has come in. It won't surprise you. 99% of you want an early general election, and just 1% of you, I think that's Barry, secretly pushing a button on his phone underneath the table.
I didn't enter the poll.
Only 1% of you, I'm only kidding, only 1% of you do not want
I saw
that.
him on his phone. It was definitely Barry.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. We need to talk about your phones, actually, and X and images and Grok. I want to squeeze in a conversation about first cousin marriage, so don't go anywhere.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest holiday sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. On Tuesday, we'll see some unsettled weather across the western Med with some snow across the hills further east. So confirmation then of some outbreaks of rain on Tuesday across the Canaries, Madeira, parts of western Spain and Portugal. Mostly fine, as I say, across the central part of the Med there, certainly for Italy, 1 or 2 showers and some bright spells too, but a risk of snow certainly across the hills of Turkey. As for the coming few days, well, things generally quieten down, but we'll see further rain at times across western parts.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, this is your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Through much of this week, whilst it is going to be markedly milder than last week, there will be some unsettled weather around, some heavy rain and even some strong winds. Currently we have low pressure to the north of the UK, and this is doing two things. It's driving some strong winds across northern parts. It's also dragging in our air from the southwest, which is why those temperatures are up compared to recent days. As we go overnight, much of England and Wales largely dry, some clear spells allowing for a bit of mist, maybe some low cloud to develop later on in the night. A bit of rain across parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England and southern Scotland, then across northern parts of Scotland, while clearer skies allowing temperatures to drop here. So some frost, some icy patches to watch out for as well first thing tomorrow morning. As we go through tomorrow then, yes, a cold, frosty, icy start across parts of northern Scotland could cause some travel disruption. There is a warning out as there are likely to be some delays. Also across western parts, a few showers starting to push their way in. Across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, quite cloudy, quite damp outbreaks of rain, similar across parts of northern northwestern England, even the far northwest of Wales. That's because there is a front that's edging its way in. Much of the rest of England and Wales starting the day largely dry, quite cloudy, could be some mist around, like I said, but quite quickly we're going to see rain pushing into southern counties, and that's because of a waving frontal system that's going to edge its way a little bit further north and east as we go through the day, and then that front towards the northwest of the UK will kind of join up with it, so a bit of rain in a fair few places, and it could be a little bit heavy for some. Towards the northwest we get something a bit drier, brighter following in later, but also some cooler air, so temperatures here lower than today, but towards the south they're looking similar. Then as we go later on, that rain continues across some parts of the southeast, eventually clearing away. Further north and west we have drier, clearer weather taking us into a chilly start on Wednesday for many of us. Watch out for Thursday, could be some unsettled weather indeed.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M8 eastbound at Junction 1, Hermiston Gate, lane restrictions are in place after a broken down vehicle. In Northamptonshire, the M1 northbound between Junction 16 and Junction 18 has a collision with 2 lanes closed. The M1 southbound entry slip at Junction 35 near Sheffield is shut after a vehicle left the carriageway. And the M1 northbound at Junction 8 in Hertfordshire has delays with 2 lanes blocked. On the M25 clockwise exit slip at Junction 11 in Surrey, 1 lane is closed after an incident. And on the trains, Great Western Railway has disruption with buses, and Greater Anglia is disrupted between Chelmsford and Braintree or Colchester. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Barry Gardner and Zia Youssef. Karen says, yes, Michelle, I absolutely do want an early general election. Whoever thought you'd see the day where we would be treated like second-class citizens in our own country, she says. Diane says, Michelle, don't make me laugh. There's no way in this world Labour will allow a snap election. Hey, very quickly, because I need to move on. You know this Carl Turner stuff that you were talking about? Yeah. There's been some suggestion that this is some kind of cooked-up plan to try and parachute Andy Burnham into an MP seat.
I think that's far-fetched, because I'm fairly sure that the NEC, if Andy Burnham went for any seat, would probably turn it into an all-woman shortlist rather quickly.
Well, but that's why he pretends to not know what a woman is, because then he can just identify as a woman.
Sneak in, identify himself as, Andriana. I don't think that's going to happen anyway. Look, don't even get me started on that one. Let's talk, shall we, about X, Twitter, as it will be known to many of you. Long story short, the regulator Ofcom has started taking a look at this. Liz Kendall, the tech secretary, she was speaking out about this today.
Sharing intimate images without someone's consent or threatening to share them, including images of people in their underwear, is a criminal offence for individuals and for platforms. The Data Act, passed last year, made it a criminal offence to create or request the creation of non-consensual intimate images. And today, I can announce to the House that this offence will be brought into force this week.
Many people are seeing this as the Labour Party essentially trying to get one back on Elon Musk, this focus on Grok and Twitter as platforms. Is that what's happening here?
No, I don't think so. Look, I'm in favour of freedom of speech. I would not be in favour of banning X, although I have to say, over the past couple of years since Elon Musk took it over, I think it has become a much more aggressive and toxic theatre. But I'm also in favour of abiding by the law, unsurprisingly. And the fact is that on the dark web last week, or I think it was the week before actually, on the dark web there were images circulating created by Grok which were basically child pornography.
There's no such thing as child pornography, child abuse. I hate this phrase,
sorry,
child pornography.
You're absolutely right, Michelle, absolutely right, of child abuse. And I think it's absolutely right that the government says this will not be allowed, and it uses all the armour that it has, all the tools in its armoury, to say the platform cannot be used by that. And if he continues to use the platform in order to do that and to sell this, now he's said, oh, well, we won't make it freely available, but we'll allow it as a premium service. This is awful. It means basically that he's trying to get people to pay in order to be able to break the law.
That's slightly disingenuous, because you're making out he's trying to monetise when people putting kids in bikinis. What he was trying to do by making that a monetised feature was make some accountability, make some trackability. If you want to do that, we'll have your name, your details, your bank details.
But we don't say in any other sphere, well, it's all right, you can go out and commit a crime as long as we know who you are and we can then reel you in quickly. That's not the way to do it. It's to stop this happening, and I'm really pleased that Liz Kendall has said, no, it's a criminal offence to actually have these software tools in order to create these horrible images.
Labour and Keir Starmer have been looking for any possible reason, looking for any excuse to ban X. Why? Because X represents everything Keir Starmer hates. It is a form of speech that he cannot control, which is why he gets ratioed routinely, as frankly do almost every Labour MP and every Labour figure on there, Michelle. And let's also be really clear about something. You can tell that everything that Liz Kendall, the government minister, is saying is disingenuous by the fact that not once has she mentioned, for example, Google's Gemini or OpenAI's ChatGPT that also allow exactly the same capability. So if we are actually genuinely concerned about those things, and people should be concerned about those things, why are Labour and Liz Kendall not talking about banning ChatGPT? Why are they not talking about banning Gemini? Why? Because they have a grudge not only against Elon Musk, they hate X because it represents speech that they cannot control. And not only are they not looking to ban ChatGPT, they're clearly using it left, right and centre. And in fact, those companies, Google and OpenAI, are either already have government contracts from this government or are in a pole position to win government contracts. That's what represents the fundamental hypocrisy of Keir Starmer and Labour.
I was actually pleased when the leader of your party came out the other day and said that he thought that Grok was disgusting and absolutely reprehensible. And I thought, good on him for saying that. Would you ban Grok? Would you say this is not allowed? Because if so, it follows, and all those other platforms would be covered by the same legislation. Any software that allowed you to make those horrible images would be banned, and the platform could be closed down.
Would you ban Photoshop as well, then? Because Photoshop's been around a very long time and is also capable of making such images.
I asked the question of
would you ban a word processor? Would you ban a word processor for writing an incendiary and insightful piece of work?
Yes or no?
No, I wouldn't ban Grok, of course not.
So you would allow people to create images that are disgusting child
No,
abuse.
because as Liz Kendall just said, that is already illegal, and that's the point. What are you going to ban knives to prevent people from committing knife crime? We've got to make sure that people abide by the law. We already have laws that prevent people from doing those things, and people would be charged. Are you going to ban? Okay, by that same token, are you going to ban ChatGPT and Gemini?
You would allow.
You should tell us as a Labour MP. Are you also willing to therefore ban? Because you clearly would ban Grok.
As is your want, but
would you ban
clear,
Grok, Barry?
You have just said that you would allow the continued monetisation.
That is already illegal.
Hang on, right, let's be grown up. He just said he wouldn't ban Grok. Would you ban Grok?
I absolutely would.
Okay, so therefore you would also ban ChatGPT and Gemini because those are doing exactly the same thing.
I would ban anything that could create an image that was child abuse.
Okay, so you'd also ban Photoshop then? Okay.
Look, let's be clear. AI, it is the future, whether you like that or not. What an AI platform is like a Grok, it is a tool. It is the sick-minded individuals that are putting these prompts into that tool that should be cracked down on. And actually, when you look at the way that people in this country are treated, when they do have child abuse material, they do create child abuse material, they walk among us. You should be immediately locked up, sent to prison when you have these kind of images.
Michelle, you rightly said that it's a sick mind that uses that tool.
Yeah.
What sort of a mind is it that creates that tool? It's just as sick and it should be stopped.
Yeah, but that can be a line of code. You can write a line of code into these things that stop it creating those kind of things. You don't just ban a whole AI tool because there's one facet of it that you don't like. And I agree with you. I don't like it. I think it's sick.
But Barry, just to be crystal clear, then you would also therefore ban Gemini and ChatGPT.
My ear I'm way over my timings, everybody. Look, God only knows what we're going to be banning this way. We'll just be sitting here. We'll only have Dewbs and Co. At least we'll have each other anyway. Look, I'll tell you what should be banned: first cousin marriage. So why isn't it then? I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Dewbs & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. It's GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I. Those are just facts. I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewberry, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Barry Gardner and Zia Youssef. Phil has got in touch and said, I absolutely do not agree with this type of thing, the imaging that we've just been discussing. He says, but isn't it astonishing how quickly the Labour Party can move to do things when they actually want to? How quickly should they be moving to ban first cousin marriage? This has come to the attention of the White House now. Sarah Rogers there, she's going, referencing concerns when it comes to civilisational concerns. Are you going to be outlawing first cousin marriage, Barry Gardner?
No.
Why?
But let me just say, the bill that we're talking about, the 10-minute rule bill, was never going.
Specific bills, we'll be here all day.
Look,
are you going to ban first cousin marriage?
I do not like first cousin marriage, OK, I'll say that, because it does increase the genetic defects, only slightly, from about 2 to 3% of the population to 3 to 4% of the population. But what I really don't like about it is the family pressure that then very often comes on young people to marry somebody who comes from the same village, who comes from the same family, and bringing cousins over, because that brings kudos and economic benefit to their family. And it's that I think is the lack of freedom that is really important here. But let's face it, Queen Victoria married Prince Albert. They were first cousins. You know, if you don't allow first cousin marriage, you're doing away with the Royal Albert Hall, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and all the rest of it. If two people who don't come from, you know, who don't know each other, fall in love and find that they're first cousins, and it's genuine rather than forced by a family, I don't think that's something that the state should be jumping in there and saying, you can't do it. If people are aware of the increased genetic problems, if they take the proper steps to ensure that they don't get into problems because of that, and they can do, to check their own genetic heritage.
So the first cousin marriage thing potentially doubles the risk of damage
it goes
to
from
children.
it goes to 3 to 4% instead of 2 to 3%. So it's not quite.
It.
No, that's not true actually.
Zia, your thoughts?
The fact that cousin marriage is not banned in the UK is an absolute disgrace. And look, first cousins share 12.5% of their DNA. That does mean that the likelihood that severely damaging recessive genes are going to be expressed in children massively increases. And yes, the likelihood of congenital diseases roughly doubles, but that compounds across multiple generations, which is what you actually see in these scenarios. It means that infant mortality spikes. And there's no libertarian argument here, because the people who suffer from this are the children, not the parents themselves. And it also means, by the way, that the very people who end up having to pay for all of this are the British taxpayer, because the NHS is paying huge amounts of money, not disclosed, because the government hides the data, to support all of this. The only reason Labour are not doing this is because they want to win an element of the Muslim vote, particularly from certain Muslim countries where this is prevalent.
Well, there you go. You're going to have to hold that thought. You will have the final say on that one at home. For now, that's all I've got time for. Gents, thank you. Have a great night. Night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again. Very good evening to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Quite a mixed picture across the UK as we go through tonight and into tomorrow. Some places will see some mist and fog patches, other places having some outbreaks of rain. Although the area of low pressure, which has brought strong winds across northern parts through today, is now clearing, and so those winds are dropping out, we do have a front pushing in across parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, and later into parts of northern England and Wales, where we are going to see some wet weather at times. Staying mostly dry there across central southern England and Wales. Cloud building through the night, some low clouds, some mist quite possible, and actually staying quite mild here. Temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Markedly colder though across northern parts of Scotland where we have clear skies. As a result, a relatively harsh frost in some places, and also some icy stretches to watch out for. Could cause some problems on the roads first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow morning, well, it's a bright, cold, icy start across northern Scotland, across western southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northern England and Wales. A wet start with that front pushing its way in, and then another front's coming up from the south, so it could be quite a bit of rain across southern counties as you're heading out the door tomorrow morning, and that rain then pushes its way northeastwards across much of central and eastern parts of southern England